We're starting week 3. So we introduced the Red Letter Challenge, and then we were being with Christ, being where Christ meets us with his gifts, and then this week forgiving. And as I said at the intro, I just think this is, for me, this is the heartbeat of the whole thing, So Pastor Zender, if you're reading ahead or if you're reading a little bit or if you looked at the videos, he tells a story about like the couch in your house. Like if you have a couch and if you pull the cushions, like your couch looks great, right? Your couch looks great. And in his sermon, he has a couch up here in the altar area, and he's showing. But when you pull the cushions up, you know, you may not want to reach down in there, right? Although you might find the remote. Right? Who knows? It's been gone for 3 months and you bought a replacement. Anyway, but I want to show you some other pictures. So Ty, I need to turn some lights down so you can see these well enough. So this is my illustration. This is in my house. So this is the dresser in my bedroom. Doesn't that look nice? It's lovely. This is untouched, by the way. No photoshopping at all. I kid you not. And then this is the next picture. That's that. That's a ball signed by Tom Seaver and another one signed by the 1969 New York Mets in the junk drawer. Wait, don't go on yet. I have things to tell you about this. This is great. The shoelaces, and they're actually used shoelaces. Isn't that gross? That's just weird. I'm too cheap. And then a set of glasses from about 5 prescriptions ago and deodorant and so forth. And anyway, whatever. Let's go on. This is in my garage. Okay, so this is in my workbench. And the next slide is that. Look, there's a toothbrush in there. This is just weird. It's just stupid. So anyway, I got one more. So this is the mudroom. In our house, the mudroom is where you walk in from the garage, everything lands there. Everything lands there. So my wife periodically says to me, clean that up. Okay, so that, isn't it? Look, there we go. Now, look, there's an old sprinkler head in there. It's broken. Anyway, it's so stupid. Anybody got any junk drawers? I have more. I don't just have one. Although rumor tells me that John Grebus does not have any junk drawers. Have I been told that? No, sorry, John. Now I'm embarrassing you. No, it's great. People like my wife, my wife doesn't really have a junk drawer. She allows these because of me. She allows these to happen. And you know how often it goes with a junk drawer? I don't know about you. Actually, I like this better than the couch illustration because with the couch, I'm not really trying to hide anything in the couch. Stuff falls out of my pocket into the couch. And sometimes you can find treasure, like a $20 bill. But in my junk drawer, I've got junk. I mean, there are some valuable things in there. But there are often things I've broken or misused or don't know, and I can't find them when I want to find them. And often my life is kind of like, hey, people are coming over. We don't want them to see all our junk. And so what ends up happening is, this is how I do it on my benches, the mudroom, and my wife says, clean it up, and I open up the drawer, and I go, and it all just goes in there, close the drawer. So I don't know about you, those pictures are illustrative. I mean, it isn't as if I'm leading some double life or I've got some goofy thing going on, but do you have it? You don't have to respond, but I'm assuming that maybe you can relate to this because I got junk drawers. Things where I would love to just sweep them off, put them in there, and sometimes it's temporary. I'm just doing it temporarily and just so nobody can see because I got guests coming over. I'm guessing that Simon the Pharisee actually did that in his own house before Jesus came over. I'm guessing when Jesus came over, he's doing that. I got more than those 3 too. I got a junk drawer in my office. I got a junk closet in my office. I have a junk closet downstairs in my house. I got 2 junk drawers in my car. One's in the middle and one's... Anybody else? Okay. I'm just hoping there's a couple of you. So to me, the heart of the whole thing is this idea of forgiveness, because in my life, metaphysically, for me, philosophically, in my own life, if I didn't have junk drawers, if my life was good, I wouldn't have a junk drawer. If everything was right, I wouldn't have a junk drawer. I've got things there I don't want Jesus to see. I got things there I don't want you to see. I make this joke about this, we love, Teresa and I love having people come over to our house. And I always say to people, hey, you can wander around and open up our drawers. It's all good. There's just some junk. But some of that junk is less appealing. Some of that junk is stuff that I wish wasn't there. Some of it's from my history. Some of it's things I grapple with now. Some of it's unforgiveness. Some of it's being less than gracious or patient. Some of it's thoughts, actions. Sometimes it's a failure to act. There's all kinds of things in my junk drawer. And I don't know what you may have in your junk drawer, but what I'm telling you is the heartbeat of the church is this topic. The church exists. The people of God, God's mission is forgiveness. The whole thing centers around that. In our particular tradition, the Lutheran tradition, you know what we call church? You know what we call this? When we get together and we talk about it at a seminary or with other pastors or with church leaders, we call this word and sacrament ministry. That's what we call it. Word and sacrament ministry. Our teachers have a ministry of the word. Pastors have a ministry of word and sacrament. Our elders assist us with bringing the Lord's Supper and words of absolution and grace to people. What that is that in the Word, God declares us forgiven and righteous. God declares His grace to us in the Word of God. You heard it already today. Jim declared it to you. Because of God's great mercy and His love, Jesus Christ was sent to die for you. It is for His sake alone that God forgives you all your sins. And so in the place, and because Christ commands us to do so, do you get that? And because Christ commands us to do so, we declare to you that your sins are forgiven, all of them. Not some of them, not sort of them, not halfway for this one, all of them. Your sins are forgiven. We had a baptism, 2 baptisms today. Jim had the joy of Rowan and, Rowan and Ryder. And so they were up there, and Jim's doing it. And our baptism is all about forgiveness. I tell people this too. You know why Lutherans make the sign of the cross? Do you remember this? Because that's what Jim said to those little boys. Receive the sign of the Holy Cross on your forehead and upon your heart to mark you as one redeemed by Christ, forgiven by Christ the crucified. It's all about forgiveness. Baptism's all about forgiveness for the family of God. And we put our faith in that promise that God has declared us forgiven. When you come to the Lord's table in just a little bit, people ask this all the time. Am I welcome to come to the Lord's table? And it's such a big, big deal for us that we actually tell people, if you're uncertain and you're not sure, we should probably talk first. Because it's a big deal. Because we don't think it's just a symbol. We don't think that you're just kind of, remembering something. Yeah, okay. But that Christ is in fact delivering to you the forgiveness of sins in His body and His blood. So we want that to be a joy because Christ longs for you to be at the table. He's longing for His forgiveness to be delivered to you. I'm doing this too long, but I'm telling you the reason this is so vital and so important to me is that this is the heartbeat of Christianity. Because it's the heartbeat of Jesus Christ. Because Jesus wants you to know that though we are broken and rebellious sometimes, and we are far from perfect, Jesus Christ has looked into every junk drawer in this room. And He has said, I love you. And I forgive you. Let's start cleaning the drawer. He wants us to know how much we're loved. The heart of all our ministry is to deliver those words of grace to people who are longing and desperate to know them, and many of whom cannot accept it. Cannot hear those words of grace. I hear this all the time. I hear 2 extremes. Pastor, we write these confessions of sin, right? We write these. So I wrote this one because I hear this all the time. Pastor, if Jesus knew everything I did, like if you knew everything I did is the way they started. If you knew everything I did, God would never forgive me. And I said, He already knows. Already done. Already forgiven. What we're struggling to do is believe it. to believe that anyone could love me that well if they knew every bit of my past and every one of my thoughts and every one of my actions that I thought I was hiding. Or I hear the other one, and it's like this. Well, my forgiveness, I'm basing it on other people. I'm not as bad as that poor schlub over there. That guy's an idiot. So I need a little bit of forgiveness. There is no such thing as a little bit of forgiveness, by the way. Do you know that? There is no such thing as a little bit of forgiveness. It's either all forgiven or none. And so this story, I laughed with Jim. If anybody sees these two recordings, it's going to be two completely different sermons. So if you see something next week or you're looking online and you go, did he talk about that? Sorry, because I said to him, I didn't quite go the way I expected. It was fine. But what I want to do is just kind of tell you this story. So Jim read it for us from the gospel, and you're probably familiar with it, from Luke chapter 7. And in the red letter challenge too, some of you are discovering it's not like you're spending 3 hours a day parsing and tearing apart every word of Jesus Christ. It's not the intention of this. That's a whole nother kind of study. And to be honest, that kind of study usually causes us to get lost in the study. This one is meant to say, Jesus says this simple thing. Will you take him up on his challenge? Will you trust that he will follow, that he will lead where you need to go? It's really a challenge. Will you trust? And will you walk with me? So it's different than that. But these red letters from this story are so powerful, and they're just so moving to me, because here's the scenario. Jesus comes into town, and Jesus is kind of edgy. Jesus is kind of like he's on the progressive fringe. All these really, right-wing, conservative, Pharisaical teachers of the law are like, hey, this is the law. You do it this way. You fudge on that. We don't like you. You're no good. He says, we're very hesitant of you. And so here comes Jesus saying, it sounds like Jesus is saying the Sabbath isn't important, and I hang out with these people that aren't very nice. We don't hang out with them. Why do you hang out with them? And so Simon, I think Simon is going, I'm the cool Pharisee. I'm kind of the moderate. I'm the moderate. And so I'm going to invite the radical rabbi into my house. I'll be cool. And I'll get to quiz him. And by the way, that's a feather in my cap. I'm kind of cutting edge, right? So Jesus comes over. Jesus accepts the invitation. And Jesus comes over to the house. And then it says, and a woman who had lived a sinful life. Now you can imagine that in your mind any way you want. But no, it's this way. When it says that, a woman who lived a sinful life, means she lived a life that everybody in town knew how sinful she was. So you just interpret that however you want. Maybe she was the biggest gossip. Maybe she had embezzled a bunch of money. Maybe she had abused drugs. Maybe she was a prostitute. We don't know. Maybe she had 5 husbands, or she was sleeping around. It's very scary when the woman who's a prostitute shows up, because all the dudes are nervous. Seriously. Is she naming names? I'm not kidding. That's a big deal. That's one of the big reasons why she's not allowed anywhere. But it says when she heard that Jesus had been invited to Simon's house, she went. Now you stop to think about that for a minute. This is a woman who every time she would walk by a really religious guy like a Pharisee, they would say something. They would say whore or harlot or you disgust me or you're unclean. She was never allowed into the synagogue or the temple, never be allowed. If you touched her, you were ceremonially and ritually unclean. And so the constant conversation about her, wherever she goes, wherever she walks, whenever she encountered a religious person, a really religious person that age, she would be abused. Nobody would have said to her, you know what? Why don't you come to my house and let's talk about how you can be loved and cared for? Because you must go through hurts in your life. And we're going to go. Now, I'm sharing all this with you because isn't Zach, Pastor Zender's thing in this whole Red Letter Challenge to change the conversation about Christians? About how religious people, I guess I'm a religious person. I don't know. I'm in relationship with Jesus Christ, but whatever. But how that conversation can change, that when people hear about Christians, or in particular in Pocatello, hear about people who attend church and who come to worship at Grace Lutheran, those people are some of the neatest, gracious, most patient, kindest people. To be honest, in this story that Jesus tells, Simon's the religious guy. And so when she comes in, she is uninvited. She is unwelcome. But no one will stop her, because if they touch her, they're in trouble. So she walks through and the waves part, because she has eyes for one person only. Because somehow, in encountering Jesus Christ, she knew that he had looked into every junk drawer in her life. And she didn't have one or two. She had every drawer in her life, in her mind, I'm guessing, was filled with junk. At least people had been telling her that her whole life. And it was true. Jesus says it. Her many sins. And so she comes into the room knowing that Jesus has looked into every drawer, and she's compelled to come to his feet. And along the way, as the waves part, you can just imagine the things that are being said about her. Who invited her? She's scum. She's disgusting. How could she dare do this? How could she dishonor the home of our host? And then, of course, Simon's words about Jesus. You know, if this guy was really what people are saying he is, he'd know. Because as she comes in, no one will touch her. No one will hand her a bowl of water. No one will give her a towel. She has a jar of perfume, and she is overcome. And she is overcome because she's well aware of the depth and the need that she has. And probably could never have believed until this moment that she would be welcome in the presence of a rabbi. And she's overcome, and she begins to sob. And as the tears pour out of her, they drip on Jesus' feet. As she's already opened the jar of perfume, expensive, because everybody stunk. So you use things like perfume, because you didn't take showers, you didn't have deodorant, you didn't do any of that. So oil, perfume, just at least cut the stench. She's pouring perfume on. She's sobbing. She has no towel. No one will hand it to her. What she got left, here's her hair. She's wiping his feet with her hair. And Simon is disgusted. How could he let her touch him? And of course, from Jesus' perspective, how could he not? And so Jesus tells a story, right? And that's one of the reasons I love these shirts. I'm in the red. Jesus says, hey, Simon, let me ask you a question. If there was a man who owed his boss, let's say a year and a half of salary, and then there was a second employee who owed his boss about a month and a half of salary, and they were both forgiven, who do you think could be more grateful? And he goes, well, duh. You know, the one who was forgiven more. And Jesus says, yeah, you're right. And he says, look at this woman. I came into your house, and you did not offer me water for my feet. You didn't greet me with a kiss. You didn't welcome me or honor me in any way. But not only did she come in and welcome me by washing my feet with her hair, she hasn't stopped kissing my feet since she arrived. And not only did she not just do oil, I got perfume. So who do you think loves more? Her or you? And that's the heart of what this is. I believe, I'm way off the outline. I'm hoping I get there. I think I will. If I do, I'll just kind of give you the blanks. But here's the deal. If we want to change people's opinions of the followers of Christ, this is the heart of it. Because if we have been forgiven of very little, then we're impatient with people and we're stingy. They don't deserve it. We're judgmental and we're critical because we're better than them. That's how all of those things arise. Critical spirit and impatient and demeaning, condemning, excluding. All of that arises out of a lack of grace. Because what it means is, well, has God been generous to you? Has God been stingy with you? Has God told you you're worthless? Has God been impatient with you? Do you get where I'm going? And so here's the deal for me. Way too often, I'm afraid that I'm viewed as, and maybe I'm more like, too often I find myself Simon. Why can't those people fill in the blank? Why can't this person? And I don't know about you, but I want to be the sinful woman. I want people in this town to say, you know what? That guy's not perfect, but he's redeemed. That person's been loved by a Savior. That person has been the recipient of a boatload of love and patience and mercy and grace. And the only way that people know that is if I show that to others. Is when I show that to others, then people know. Because here's the dilemma. So for instance, on Good Friday, I don't know how many of you have come to a Good Friday service here, 8 p.m. You got to go if you've never been. I sit there. You know why I read all the stuff from back there? Because I'm sobbing. I mean, I can hardly contain my emotions through the whole thing. And you know what? It's one of those times, it's one of the reasons why I love worship, for me anyway, and why I love the Good Friday service. Because you know what? I'm not thinking about nobody else, just my need and how God filled it in Christ. Just my need. And what makes me stingy or miserly is when I think about other people. How come that person can't get their act together? How come that person can't work harder? How come that person can't? And whatever, fill in the blank. And it's only when I know the fullness and the full depth of God's love for me. And you know what? It's not about other people. I just want to know that I've received it. And when I have fully been forgiven, when I know the depth and the completeness of my grace, then I'm able to show to others. Here's the things that I wanted to share with you on this. 4 things, really quickly, because the story of forgiveness is this. Too often we want Jesus to affirm us. You're not so bad. It's almost like we want Jesus to come along and say, well, you know, those sins you do, they're no big deal. Everybody does them. It's no big deal. You're not an axe murderer. You're golden. And sometimes we just want him to affirm us. I think that's almost what Simon's agenda is. Hey, I'm inviting you in. You know, I'm the cool Pharisee. I'm kind of a moderate. Okay, you come on in. I'll listen to you. My buddies won't listen to you. I'm very different than them. And we kind of want Jesus to affirm us in our rationalizing and our justification of our own sin, and that we really don't need that much. And then secondly, if we do need forgiveness, sometimes we want just enough forgiveness. I don't need as much forgiveness as that guy over there. I don't need as much forgiveness. I mean, they really need forgiveness, Jesus. So you just go do your work with them. I just need this little bit. Give me this little chunk of forgiveness. And the problem with that is to ask the question, if you just need just enough forgiveness, what's just enough sin? How much sin condemns us? How much sin separates us from God? How much sin creates a gulf that only the cross can cover? Not much. And the third thing is this, and so beware. When Jesus is invited in, and you know, it's funny, we think that the woman is not invited into Simon's house. But here's the deal. The moment Simon invited Jesus in, he invited her in as well. I'm giving you this warning, Christians. If you invite Jesus into your junk drawer and into your life, you're inviting everyone else in too. And so she comes in, and she is forgiven. And so the heartbeat of this whole thing and of what we're talking about in Red Letter and who we are as followers of Christ, long beyond these 40 days, is that when we know the depth and completeness and fullness of God's grace to me, to you, just to you, don't worry about nobody else, that God has every thought, every action, every piece of history, every one that is to come on that cross, it's all paid for. He opened up every junk drawer, looked through every bit of your life, and said, this is why I came. I didn't come because your drawer all looked great. I didn't come because the counter of your dresser was clean. I came because of what's in the junk drawer. So are you on death row? Were you? Or did you just get a speeding ticket? He who has been forgiven much loves much. And there's something that Pastor Zender says in the Red Letter Challenge too that I love on this particular topic. He says, holding on to the past prevents us from taking hold of the future which Christ has in store for us. As long as we're willing to say that past doesn't matter or that past can't be forgiven, we can't take hold of that for which Christ has taken hold of you. He has already taken hold of you, and allow Him to know His victory, His forgiveness, and His grace. Amen.